Hello, my name is Andy and I am the Village Idiot. I'm armed with a car and a GoPro and an unhealthy amount of time on my hands. I'm using that time to attempt to visit every civil parish in England. You're watching the Rushcliffe series. This is the southernmost district in Nottinghamshire and it contains 59 civil parishes of England. And there's some corkers down here. Let's dive in and check one out. Welcome back to Rushcliffe, everybody, where this current run of villages near its eastern boundary continues. And I think you're going to like this one. There's plenty of cherry blossom around here. Spring is definitely in the air. Welcome to the lovely parish of Orston. Here's my disclaimer for people who may be watching me for the first time. I say things as I would in my native accent and dialect. As a result, I may not pronounce things in the same way as the locals do. Remember, I'm a visitor. It's impossible to know everything. Leave me a comment, spin me a like and bash that subscribe button. Let's get to today's parish video. Orston, Osica's settlement. The final parish in this current eastern run in Rushcliffe brings us to the village of Orston, whose name means Osica's settlement. I reckon as derivations go, that's a pretty one. And in fact, it's quite apt anyway, because Orston can be considered a very desirable little place. This was once an industrial behemoth, but you'd likely never guess from walking around its tight and narrow little streets. Until 1915, it was here in Orston where plaster was produced, and I don't mean the ones you stick on your finger when you cut yourself. Instead, I'm talking about the type that's spread on walls. It was made by baking ground gypsum in brick ovens. There were two plaster mines in Orston. If people were not coming here to work in the plaster mines, they might have been here for health reasons instead. Centuries ago, Orston had a spa that was said to be great for treating scurvy. It wouldn't be very good these days, as the last time it was tested, the water was deemed unfit for human consumption. Water features are quite plentiful out here in fact. The village lies on two watercourses, one a river, which we've met before, and the other a drain that splits the main street, Loughbon, into two pieces. There's a church, a pub, a village hall, and even a railway station in this one. So, let's go. We start our walk on the high street, a long, narrow, dead-end road to the west of the village. You can tell just by looking at this that Orston began life as a largely agricultural settlement. The housing is typical Nottinghamshire too. Most of it is built of red brick, which likely came from the various brick and tile works around the Vale of Belvoir. In the mid to late 1800s, the church owned a large percentage of Orston, as well as the rectory and the church hall. It was perhaps to be considered the centrepiece of life here. It's our first major landmark, and it's on Launder Street. Dedicated to St Mary, Orston's modest church is a Grade 1 listed building that forms part of the Cranmer Group, together with St Thomas's at Aslockton, St Mary and All Saints at Hawksworth, St Helena's at Thoroton, and St John of Beverley at both Scarrington and Watton in the Vale. This one is used infrequently now, with services held roughly twice a month. The core of its nave appears to be 13th century, with its aisles dating from a similar period. Its most interesting feature is in its north aisle, where a restored military drum, beaten at the Battle of Waterloo, is on display. The village's first school was on this road, and you're looking at it. Located on the edge of the churchyard, this doubled as a reading room in the evenings. Theories suggest this was done on purpose to discourage men from instead going to the nearby pub. Launder Street forms part of the historic village centre along with Church Street, the Green and the High Street. Originally, all of the cottages would have been aligned to face the church, highlighting its importance. Modern infill development since has generally retained the rural character of the area. The school would eventually find its way onto Church Street, and here it is in its modern form. This school's premises were built in 1939 and originally it had 158 pupils. The latest Ofsted report rated this school outstanding in all important respects. Undergoing some renovation next door is the Durham Ox pub. It used to be called the Royal Oak Hotel, but it's been the Durham Ox ever since the end of World War II, when the original Durham Ox on Launder Street closed and its name was transferred to this building instead. The name is a reference to the animal that once toured the country. At the end of Church Street is a parish notice board, a wooden pinboard this time, which makes a change. Mark off Orston, everyone. Handily, the Green also has this amazing little information board where a lot of the information I'm telling you about the place comes from. It shows a map of the village dating from 1900. Here's the Green, and yes, it's modest, but it's still a lovely little feature right in the middle of the place. Orston has a second Green too, we'll see it later. Over the road from that we have a phone box. No phones, books or defibs here, just a collection of lovely plants instead. Orston's main street is called Loughbon. It's a curious name and nobody seems to know how or why it came about. To the south of this street was the Royal Plaster Works. Interestingly, it wasn't named thanks to any kind of royal patronage, rather it was down to its owner being the publican of the Royal Oak Hotel. Loughbon likely had some shops and facilities at one time. An old post office still stands and it's on your screen now. By 1915 this had moved to the White House on the corner of Chapel Street. Nowadays Loughbon is residential from start to finish, and it's quite a pretty street too. Historically, Orston had a number of wells and public water pumps. Water has always been a plentiful feature in and around the village. Halfway down Loughbon is Bon Moor Drain, which splits the street into two parts. This is a shallow stream, tiny in comparison to the River Smite, which we'll catch in a bit. Just over that we come to the War Memorial, which here takes the form of a bench and a wall made of sandbags. You can't help but notice too the details of this. Check out the mess tin and tin hat, which are fixed down. Orston lost a total of 6 men in World War I, 40 in total served. At the end of the road we come to a junction with Mill Lane. We're turning right here, and in doing so we're heading for Orston's Village Hall on the end of Lombard Street. Distinctly late 20th century, the village hall has room for more than 100 guests. It features a kitchen, a bar, a PA and a lighting system, making it the ideal place locally for any kind of event. It should be noted several sports clubs are based here. If sport's not your thing, Orston can also offer a well-renowned riding school and a clay pigeon shooting club at the nearby Orston Shooting Ground. Now, there's no such thing as a boring bit in any village that looks like Orston, is there? However, this bit probably is the least interesting, shall we say. What this road does is it runs south towards Elton Station. We're not going all the way down there on the walk, but we are going to end this video at that station later. I'm going to drive to it. But we are going to follow it for a short way before turning right, because it'll form a nice little loop back into the village again. And there ain't much on this bit, I'm afraid. Whilst Orston is a generally flat village, walking this exact route will take you up a very steep and somewhat unforgiving incline next. This is Hill Road, and once at the top you happen upon a building that was the single largest employer in the village for most of the 20th century. Following the closure of the Plaster Works, corn milling soon became profitable. In 1920, this large mechanised mill on Station Road was built. It would supersede Orston's old windmill on Mill Lane. Now, of course, milling is history and the building is residential. What goes up must come back down again, and to get back to lesser altitudes we find ourselves on a path that crosses a field. Let me tell you, the views from up here are absolutely spectacular. You can see quite a long way away to the south and the west towards Nottingham and the Trent Valley. Here's the end of the path, which will bring us onto Lombard Street. This road is a collection of informally arranged cottages and farmhouses surrounded by paddocks and pastureland. In times past, there was a large warehouse on this road. It was pulled down sometime before the end of 2008. Lombard Street is a dead end, but it becomes a track called Moor Lane, which led to the site of Orston's second plaster works, which was set up next to the Nottingham to Skegness railway line. It was a much larger enterprise than the one in the village centre, and accounted for about 8% of the country's entire gypsum plaster production. Here I've included an image from Google Maps showing you the remains of the operation and the track which led to it from Lombard Street. It's inconceivable to think now how busy this peaceful rural street would once have been. The path we've just followed is known as the Walk, and it's brought us to Chapel Street. This road was one of the locations of something known to the locals as the Rows. They were terraced houses, one up and one down dwellings, and they were built to house employees of the Royal Plaster Works. Of course, Chapel Street has an actual chapel too, hence the name. This one was Wesleyan, but Orston also had a primitive chapel too. Built in 1870, that one was located on Loughbon. This one dates from 1869, and it was still in use sporadically until very recently. Okay, so at the end of Chapel Street, the road becomes a footpath. Now I'm calling this the long footpath because even though I don't think it actually has an official name, it is quite a lengthy one. And the next time I will talk to you will be at the Millennium Green, which is about a quarter or a half a mile away from the village centre. And this is where that path will take us. Well, that was the plan, but you know by now I like a good countryside shot. This is the view you get along the path, and it's rather pleasing. Before long you come to a bridge, and here's a familiar river. Once again, we're over the River Smite. You can access the opposite bank of the Smite here by using Gibson's Bridge. This is named after Barry Gibson, and his contribution to Orston will become apparent shortly. Unlike the last time we saw this river, you may notice it's very straight. It used to meander somewhat here, but now it's been artificially straightened in order to manage flooding. And so to the Millennium Green, a wonderful patch of land on the riverbank and right on the edge of Orston village. The green was created to mark the new millennium in the year 2000. The land this occupies was donated by that man, Barry Gibson, who has a memorial stone right in the heart of the place. The green is divided into a number of habitats: a mown utility area for sport and recreation, a flower meadow, deciduous woodlands planted with native species, and a wilderness area where a pond once was. Other points of interest here include a clone of the major oak and also a willow tunnel. Okay, so exiting the Millennium Green, we turn right, we're heading back towards the High Street. It's the first left turn over this bridge. This bridge is quite narrow, by the way. I drove into the village via this road earlier, and it looks deceivingly wide, but trust me, it's not. So if you are coming into Orston this way, do be careful. So between the bridge and the High Street, there isn't really much. It's just a case of a road and some trees more than anything else. Infrequently you'll hear a car come past too. It's quite quiet. Now, we aren't quite finished with this episode just yet. There are two more things I'd like to cover. You already know what one of them is, and that's the railway station. That's our end point. But before we go there, we also need to take a drive up to the playing field, which is not within the main village cluster. It's away to the northeast. So let's get in the car and off we go. So using the car, our last job is to check out the railway station, but on the way, let's go to the playing field. We do that by using Spa Lane, whose name is a reference to Orston's historic spa. First recorded on a map in 1637, it was said to be a good remedy for scorbutic complaint, which is more commonly known as scurvy. An attempt was made to commercialise the spa in the 19th century, but it wouldn't get very far today. The last time it was tested, its waters were deemed unfit for human consumption. The spa is still signposted, and it's located next to the Orston Recreation Ground. This is where Aslockton and Orston Football Club play their home games. They were founded in the year 2000 and were previously known as Aslockton Cranmers, named of course after the Archbishop of Canterbury. And lastly, we make our way towards Elton and Orston railway station, which sits on the boundary between the two villages. Formerly known simply as Elton as opposed to its more lengthy modern name, this was opened by the Ambergate, Nottingham, Boston and Eastern Junction Railway, and services began in 1850. The line was taken over by the Great Northern Railway in 1855, and it's now part of the Nottingham to Skegness line, which we've met before. In a similar fashion to Aslockton, certain features of this one were designed by Thomas Chambers Hine. And that's been Orston, everyone. I'll see you in the next one, here in Rushcliffe. Thanks for watching this video, folks. Don't forget to like this episode if you haven't already. It really makes a difference with YouTube. If you're new here, subscribe to the channel for more videos like this, and give us a share too if you've got friends who'd like it. You can find all the links to my social media accounts below, as well as my Buy Me a Coffee page where you can donate to the channel. Also, if you've enjoyed this episode, have a look at some more videos in this series. Until next time, I've been Andy, also known as the Village Idiot, and I'm out.